Are we in a housing bubble? There are a lot of people out there writing some eye-catching headlines about that question. Today, we'll talk about some data to give you another perspective. So let's dive right in. Today is February 15th, 2021. My name's Harry Moore, and I'm a real estate agent in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I've been helping people buy and sell homes for over 25 years, and today we're going to take a look at the housing bubble chatter that seems to be all over social media these days. For many folks, the harsh memories of the Great Recession are still fresh in their minds, and some people are making noises about this being a repeat of what happened in 2008 to 2011. Well, first, let's take a look at where we stand today and some of what's driving today's market, and then we'll talk about the differences between the Great Recession and now. I'm also going to compare national numbers versus some local numbers for Montgomery County to give you a little better sense of what's happening in our neck of the woods. Here's a slide that breaks down some metrics nationally that we can use to compare what's going on in today's market versus a year ago. First up, a leading indicator of market activity, showings. They're up 63.5% versus the first 2 months of 2020, and that was one of the best years in the past decade. Another leading indicator is purchase mortgage applications, which are up 17% over the same period last year. Once a buyer has a house under contract, that shows up as a pending transaction, and nationally those numbers are up 21%. So here's a graphic that shows what's going on in Montgomery County. As you can see from the red line, over the past 90 days, the levels have been up versus the prior year on average 18%. So just a little bit below the national levels. The next thing to look at is closed sales. The national numbers come in at 22% above the prior year, while here in Montgomery County, the average for the past 90 days clocks in at 25%. But the real story of the market is the red bar. Inventory. It's down 45% year over year nationwide. Back over to the county graph. The yellow line at the bottom tells pretty much the same story, with a 35% average deficit year over year on available homes for sale in Montgomery County. So, the shelves are bare in the real estate store, both nationally and locally. This kind of reminds me of visiting the Kensington Safeway in the spring of 2020 and looking for toilet paper. Here are some national numbers from Case-Shiller and the FHFA. At roughly 10%, that's really strong price appreciation nationwide. Here's a graph that shows the rate of historic appreciation nationwide for existing home sales over the past 20 years, with an average of 3.8%. This year's numbers almost 3 times that high. Here in Montgomery County, the median sales price moved up from $436,000 to $500,000 last year, or an increase of 14%. So, well ahead of the national average. That's great news for sellers, but it's not really sustainable in the long term. The question is, what do people see happening in the rest of 2021, and how will the market dynamics change? Here's some national projections from some experts who track that data. With an average of these opinions of roughly 5%, that's above the historic rate of 3.8, but well below what we saw in 2020. That's actually good news in my opinion. An overheated market for a long period would probably force a major correction, whereas a gradual return to something a little bit closer to historic rates would signal a more healthy adjustment, sort of a soft landing. Here's a graph that shows the past 10 years worth of activity nationally. The orange line shows nationwide inventory in months of supply, and the blue line shows an average sale price. As you can see, inventory has marched steadily downward, and as supply has tightened, prices have moved up. Here are 2 charts for Montgomery County that tell a really similar story. A fairly steady decrease in inventory from about 3,000 available units down to 1,500 for the past year. Meanwhile, prices have moved up from the $350,000 range to the high 400s during the same time period. Let's take a minute and look at how the market today is different than it was in the last run-up during the early 2000s. This shows you the level of inventory in 2007, which was when the market really started to turn. Inventory was at almost 9 months. That's solid buyer's market territory. It didn't get back down to that level until 2011. And as you can see, it's remained solidly in seller's market territory for about the past 8 or 9 years nationally. Flipping back over to Montgomery County, you can see that inventory levels have been steadily under 3 months of supply since 2016 and mostly under 2 months worth of inventory since 2018. One of the things that really drove the real estate market crash during the Great Recession was all of the crazy financing programs that enabled people to get into houses with virtually no money down. So they had no equity. As soon as the market turned south, those people were underwater. It's a whole different story now. Banks are much more careful. You have to have money and real income. Go figure. This chart shows you that 25% of homes were underwater in 2010 versus 3% today. That means that if the market does turn, most people will be able to sell and still walk away with money. And they've also got enough cushion in their equity that they could afford to wait it out. That was certainly not the case during the Great Recession. On top of that, the government has stepped in with forbearance and a foreclosure moratorium to give people breathing room to try and get back on their feet. None of that was in place the last time the market turned. So, the pace of the market will probably slow, which is actually a good thing in the long term. But the market fundamentals are very different now than they were back in 2007 and 2008. So the outcome of an adjustment will most likely be less severe. If you're thinking about selling, it is an amazing time to be a seller. Certainly the best seller's market that I've seen in 25 years in the business. If you want to check out my recent video about selling and buying a home at the same time, click over there. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel so you can get updates as they come out, click over here. If you have any questions for me, my contact information is below. You can leave a comment in the remarks or message me directly. Take care and stay safe.